One of these three young ladies is a gold miner. What is your name, please?
My name is Pamela Painter.
My name is Pamela Painter.
My name is Pamela Painter.
Only one of these young ladies is the real Pamela Painter. The other two are imposters and will try to fool this panel. Tom Poston, Peggy Cass, Orson Bean, and Kitty Carlisle. On to Tell the Truth with your host, Bud Collier.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and welcome once again to Tell the Truth. Good evening, panel.
Good evening, Bud.
My bright and shining friends, and you are that. We're brought to you tonight by Primatine Mist, the new aerosol relief for bronchial asthma attacks. Now, in front of you, you'll find your envelopes. You haven't looked inside them yet, but you may look inside this one and follow along with me, if you will, please. I, Pamela Painter, am a prospector and miner. I am presently involved in a gold dredging operation in the steaming Brazilian jungle about 1,000 miles up the Amazon River. I am the only non-native woman in an area of some 250,000 square miles. I sleep in a hammock in a thatched hut, eat native food, cope with electric eels, piranha, insects, and snakes, and fight to ward off malaria. I put up with all these miseries because our operation is in the center of one of the world's richest remaining unexploited gold fields. Signed, Pamela Painter. Now, panel, these three very lovely young ladies all claim to be Pamela Painter, gold miner. Never saw anything like this back in the 49, did you? Let's start the questioning with Tom Poston. Tom?
You know, I was startled when the first lady said her name because for some reason I thought she said Pamela Paydirt. And I thought that would be too far a stretch.
Sure would.
I would like to ask Pamela, number two, where does gold come from? Where does gold come from in the first place? Why is it there in the ground?
What makes it, you mean? What forms
Yeah,
it?
where does it...
Well, it's been formed.
I mean, how is it how does it collect in that one specific place? What forces of nature cause that?
Well, sometimes it depends on the gold. Sometimes it's found in quartz veins. It's been formed in quartz veins.
Well, thank you. Okay. Number three, how come you have to fight electric eels? Do they get in the sluices and all that stuff?
No, they don't get in the sluices, but they are in the water sometimes, and the best thing to do is avoid them.
Oh, of course, but why would...
Peggy Cass.
Thank you. Number two, what is placer mining?
It's mining of a mineral which is not in its natural form, which has been deposited in a river or a stream.
Thank you. Number three, are you married?
No, I'm not.
I see. Number one, what employment agency would send a single girl to the Brazilian jungle? I mean, it just amazes me. Well, never mind. Now, number two, how much does it cost to mine an ounce of gold, say? To mine, the cost.
Well, that would depend on the operation.
Well, say in the United States.
I haven't any idea.
Well, number three, how much does the government pay per ounce of gold?
Orson Bean.
Yes, number one, tell me about the steaming Brazilian jungle that you inhabit. Have you ever run across a despicable little beast called the El Yonko Wombat?
Oh,
He's a loathsome creature. You'd know it if you'd seen him. You've never seen that beast, eh?
some others, though, with better names.
What awful beasts have you seen? Maybe you can add some to my collection.
Oh, golly, there's one marsupial, kind of a sloth that's got a very long name. There's a couple of cats. Well, the cats are the worst thing.
Oh, they're shockers. Number three, how do you keep the natives from stealing nuggets of gold?
Well, that's the problem, but everyone wears either a revolver or a pistol in their belt.
I see. Number two, do you know a man by the name of Guy Vincent?
No, I don't.
Number one, have you ever heard of this man?
No, I don't.
Number three, again, what about the piranha, those nasty little fish that eat you up? Do you ever run across those in the Amazon?
Yes, upon occasion.
Piranha fish?
Yes.
Kitty Carlisle.
Number one, what is the price of gold per ounce in America?
Per ounce?
Yeah.
Well, it's $1 a gram. This is the way we go in this way. It's all in grams a meter.
Thank you. Number 2, how far is Brasilia from Rio by air? By air, you mean air hours? Yes. About an hour, I guess. Number 2, how do you fight malaria today? Do you still take quinine?
I'm number 3.
Number 3.
You try. Well, at first you should take the preventative rather than waiting until you get malaria.
Number 1, how did you get this job?
All by myself. Went down as a tourist.
Number 2, how much do you export per day? Do you get out of this mine? Well, that depends upon the area that we're mining and how rich the mine is at the time.
That's all we have time for, panel. You've finished with the questions, but you start now with answering the questions to your own satisfaction by marking your ballots, if you will, please. Mark them at once, without consultation, of course, and without change once you have marked. Vote as you go for number 1, number 2, or number 3. The team of challengers will receive $250 for every incorrect vote. Are all ballots marked? All right, Tom, for whom did you vote?
Well, I voted for number 3. Although it says prospector and miner, I'll assume that maybe she works in more of an administrative capacity and possibly in an office, because her hands certainly look well cared for, but I thought it was number 3.
Peggy Cass.
I voted for number 1 because number 2 and 3 have short hair and you have to do it up in rollers and there are no hairdressers. But number 1 has long hair and you can wind it around and just wash it and it takes care of itself.
Okay. Orson Bean.
Well, when I mentioned the name of the hated El Yunko wombat, number 2 blanched visibly, so I voted for her.
So far, 1 for each. Kitty, with whom are you casting your lot?
I'm voting for number 1. Number 2 gave us, I thought, some pretty evasive answers about what comes out of the mine, and they all have very nicely cared for hands, but number 1 blanched, I thought, when she talked about the fauna in the Amazon River, and she said there were some pretty horrible animals. You didn't talk about the gaboon.
Too much for a family show. I don't want to...
All right, the votes are in and the minds are made up. Now let's find out how they voted and how it stacks up with the truth. We know how they voted with the reasons given. Let's find out which of these 3 young ladies, in truth, is the gold miner. Will the real Pamela Painter please stand up? Thank you very much, Pamela. It's a very exciting thing. How long have you been doing this now?
About 3 years now.
Plan to continue doing it, do you?
Oh, yes, I intend to. It's the way I make my living.
Boy.
Believe it or not.
Number 1, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My real name is Very Noble, and I work for Toho International. It's a Japanese film distributor.
Thank you. And number 3, what is your real name and what do you do?
My name is Ellen Bateman, and I'm sales manager for Linens of the Week, and it's a linen supply firm in Washington, D.C.
Well, we thank you, ladies, and in checking the score, we find that there are 1, 2, 3 incorrect votes. That should brighten your eyes and bring the nuggets to the fore. That's a total of $750 that you get. Also, on your way out, you will receive a gift package from the makers of Primatine and all the wonderful products they make. And we thank you for sharing your evening with us. You brighten it no end, brighter than any gold could possibly do it. Good night, and God bless you. Now, let's meet our next team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Frank Fredericks.
My name is Frank Fredericks. My name is Frank Fredericks.
Follow along once again, panel, will you? I, Frank Fredericks, am an authority on cheese. Not any kind of cheese, just one particular kind, Roquefort. Any cheese that claims to be Roquefort and is not made and cured in the caves of Roquefort, France, is an imposter and will not stand up under investigation. In 1666, the French government passed a law to protect the name and standards of Roquefort cheese in France. It is my job to protect the name Roquefort in this country. To do so, I eat in restaurants throughout the country, tasting and testing to make sure that what appears on the menu as Roquefort cheese is actually the real thing. In an average year, I personally eat about 100 pounds of Roquefort. In cheese circles, I am known as the Roquefort Detective. Signed, Frank Fredericks. Bean, Orson.
Thank you, Bud. Number 3, do you find that eating this much Roquefort cheese has affected your social life? I mean, do people know it when you walk in the room? Or, I mean, has it changed your outlook in any way?
I'm still popular.
Are you? Good. Number 1, who is Ben Gunn, or who was Ben Gunn?
I don't have the faintest idea.
Number 2, have you ever heard of Ben Gunn?
I have no idea.
Number 3.
Sounds like a movie character.
All right. Number 1, who is Otto Confide?
Same answer.
All right. Number 2, what kind of cheese is chèvre?
I am a Roquefort detective.
I see. All right. Number 3, what if it isn't Roquefort? And do you make a scene in the restaurant? Do you throw it on the floor? Or how do you punish them for passing an inferior brand of cheese off as Roquefort?
I go out very quietly, and they hear from me later.
And what can you do to them?
Kitty Carlisle.
Number 2, how can you tell fake Roquefort from real Roquefort?
It's quite simple for an expert.
How?
Well, there are various ways. Taste, also under the microscope, which is necessary.
You bring your microscope with you to dinner.
No, we smuggle it out.
Number 3, why has the French government made a special ukase in the favor of Roquefort cheese and not any of the others? Why not Camembert or Brie or Sèvres?
Primarily because the Roquefort producers were active enough in years gone by to want to protect their name when the others, I suppose, were a little bit asleep.
Thank you. Number 1, do you know how they hunt truffles in France?
Yes, I do, even though it has nothing to do with cheese.
That's not my fault.
They use truffle pigs.
Thank you.
Tom Poston.
Thank you. Number 3, finish what you say. What do you do to stop people from misnaming their cheese product Roquefort when it's not?
Well, we gently remind them that they've made a mistake, and if they don't mend their ways, why, we get a little bit unpleasant. We don't like to do that.
Legal steps of one kind or another?
That's right.
Thank you. Number 2, when does Roquefort go into the caves?
Third day.
And number 1, what steps does a cheese go through before it goes into the caves?
Well, actually, it's collected in vans or vats. It's called vent in French, and vats, you would call it in this country. The milk goes into vats, then subsequently it goes into caves.
Milk from what animal, number 3?
Number 2, milk from what animal?
Sheep.
Thank you. Number 3, of what material are the caves made in which this cheese is kept?
They're limestone caves.
Thank you. Number 1, how many miles of caves are there?
Well, it's a difficult question. I would say roughly there are about 30 caves on an average. I would say about a total of perhaps 3.5 miles.
Thank you. Number 3, are there guided tours through these caves?
Through some of them, the big manufacturers do conduct tourists.
Thank you. Number 2, what is the name of the hotel in Roquefort?
I have never been in France.
Oh, my gosh.
That's all the time we have. Time for you now to mark your ballots. Would you please do so at once without change and, of course, no consultation amongst you. Just mark for number 1, number 2, or number 3. All ballots, I see, are marked. So, Tom, for whom did you vote?
You know, I voted for number 3 because he looked like he'd been to France. No, we had a man here from that was a cheese expert, on to tell the truth. And I ran into him later in a restaurant, and we talked about cheeses for hours and hours and hours. And I feel like I should have known more than I did after that long time.
Peggy Cass.
Well, I voted for number 3 because, gee, if 2 works for them, how come he never has to report to the office? It's because he's never been there. And they do have guided tours because I was on one once. And I don't know how many miles of caves there are, but it seems to me that there's an awful lot. Well, anyway, I voted for 3.
Orson Bean.
Ben Gunn, incidentally, is a great character in Treasure Island, who says, tell him as Ben Gunn is partial to a bit of cheese. He lived on nothing but cheese for 10 years. Sorry, friends, I had to get that in. I voted for number 3. The other 2 look like they could tell the right cheese, but he looks like he has the strong arm to, throw a bomb through the guy's window. From now on, you'll use our cheese. Oh, no, not really.
Kitty Carlisle.
I voted for number 3. Number 1 said they put the milk first into vans and then changed it to vats. changed it to that. And I don't believe that number 2, who could work for this company, had never been to France. And I thought number 3 had that steely-eyed look that he wouldn't allow anybody to use anything but the real Roquefort.
You're playing this thing like a private eye game. Very well, unanimous for 3. This has sometimes led you down the primrose path, other times it's been good. Let's see what it does for you this time. As we learn now, which one of these gentlemen, in truth, is the Roquefort detective? Will the real Frank Fredericks please stand up? Real smart they were that time, real smart. Number 1, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My name is Vadim Gantsev. I'm a radio announcer and producer.
And number 2, what is your real name and what do you do, sir?
My name is George Adams. I design stamps for Afghanistan.
Well, in checking the score, we find that there were no incorrect votes, but in that case, there is still $150 coming your way. And, of course, when you weigh out a gift package of all the fine products from the makers of Primatine. And we thank you for joining us. Hope you had as much fun as you seem to. We certainly did have a good time. Good night, and God bless you. And the panel will be back at it in just a moment, right after we meet our 3rd team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Harry Simmons.
My name is Harry Simmons.
My name is Harry Simmons.
Follow along once again, Pat, will you please? I, Harry Simmons, am faced every year with what has been called the world's toughest jigsaw puzzle. I am the man who makes up the game schedules for both the National and American baseball leagues. Each year, I arrange for 20 teams in 17 different cities to play 1,620 games. Each team must play 81 games at home and 81 games away, and an equal number against each opponent in the league. I must also try to minimize the strain on the players by taking into account plane, train, and bus routings. So far in my career, I have scheduled some 22,680 baseball games. No electronic computer yet devised has been able to cope with this job. Signed, Harry Simmons. Bring you this time, panel, 3 gentlemen all claiming to be Harry Simmons. Let's start with Peggy Cass. Peggy?
Thank you. Number 2, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing scheduling 14 years.
Number 3, it sounds like a terribly hard job. Would you please tell me what team Rabbit Moranville played on?
The Boston Braves.
Thank you. Number 1, what team did Pepper Martin play on?
St. Louis.
Thank you. Tell me, 10 years ago, how many teams were there in the American League, number 2?
8 teams.
8 teams. And number 3 in the National League 10 years ago?
Same number.
Number 1, does a baseball player have it in his contract that he must fly?
He doesn't have it in his contract, but he's expected to.
But number 3, if somebody decided he didn't like to fly and took the train, he would never make it, right?
No, he wouldn't if they had a very long move. If they moved from New York to Los Angeles, for example, I doubt it.
Orson Bean.
Number 2, are there any moves that are considered the most exhausting by the players? Like from one city to another, or types of moves that are...
Well, I would say that New York to Los Angeles, but with flying today, it's not a great effort.
Mm-hmm. Number 1, which kind of travel do the players seem to prefer?
Well, today they prefer the airplane.
Uh-huh. Number 3, does the change in hours affect the players?
Not especially.
Uh-huh. All right, number 2, when did the Boston Bees go out of existence?
Well, the Boston Bees had left Boston to go to Milwaukee in 1953.
All right. Number 1, what did you do before you had this job?
Well, I was with the International League, and I've always been interested in baseball.
Kitty Carlisle.
The mind reels. Number 1,
Could she ask about polo?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Why don't you ask about
Do you have to arrange for the National Leagues to play the American Leagues, or do the National Leagues play the National Leagues and the American Leagues play the American Leagues all the time?
Yeah, I have to let you in on something. Kitty has never been to a baseball game in her life. Is that right, Kitty?
That's right.
The only time that is set aside for what you are talking about is the All-Star game, which is a 3-day break in the middle of July.
In other words, they always play their own teams.
That's right.
That makes it easier for you. Do they take their
All right,
families?
Kitty, the bell rang. You stalled long enough. You got yourself through it very nicely.
I'm pretending. I want to ask another question.
Tom Poston.
Number 3, is that the only time that the schedule departs from interleague meetings, is in the All-Star game?
Intra-league.
Pardon me?
Intra-league. Intra-league, you mean? Not interleague.
Intra-league.
Oh, listen, don't give me that. Number 1 said that the only time that the teams don't play their own league is at the All-Star time. Is that true, number 3?
That and the World Series, yes.
And number 2, there's one more, at least, that I know of.
Those are the only 2 that I know.
One more, number 1?
Well, that is not a scheduled game. You're talking about the game between the 2 New York teams. I presume the Mayor's Trophy.
Don't you have to handle that scheduling?
No.
It's not part of his billowing. All right, time to mark your ballot, so take up your bats and let's go, shall we? And I hope you don't strike out. You didn't last time, see what you do this time. Vote without consultation for number 1, number 2, or number 3. All marked. And Tom, for whom?
I voted for the guy that knew about the Mayor's game between the Yankees and the Mets in New York City.
Peggy.
Number 2, it wasn't the Bees that left Boston to Milwaukee, it was the Braves. I voted for number 1.
Did you?
Orson.
I voted for number 1. He's very sweet, and he was able to answer Kitty's question about the, whoever it was.
And Kitty?
I voted for number 1.
Oh, you did it again.
When it comes to sports and baseball, I use my instinct.
Of course. All right, here again, unanimous this time for number 1. Let's see what it holds by way of truth inside its little kernel and see whether or not we go all the way right or all the way wrong. As we learn now which one of these gentlemen in truth is the real Harry Simmons. Will the real Harry Simmons please stand up?
Got it. What?
Oh, boy, we have a word for that. You skunked the panel. They did it the last time, and I think they were coasting on the flush of victory. After having unanimously been right in the last round, they tried it again, and they came a cropper. That must really be a fantastic job, though, to keep all those loose ends straight in that thing. Well, how far ahead do you start with the scheduling?
We're working now on 66.
Wow, and I guess you have to, don't you?
Yes, because ballparks, when not in use, like to find other features, and they have to be well advised, well in advance, when the ballpark will be available.
And it must be madness, sheer madness, when you get 1 or 2 days of rain that throws the whole schedule in a mess, doesn't it?
Well, actually, this becomes a local affair. They schedule a doubleheader later on in the season when they
make
can.
it up that way.
Yes.
Well, I thank you, sir. I don't envy you. Number 1, what is your real name? You got most of the votes, and what do you do?
My name is Paul Zing, and I'm a real estate broker associated with Stanton Company in Montclair, New Jersey.
And number 2, what is your real name, and what do you do?
I'm Jack Stillwell. I'm vice president of Morgan Jones Incorporated. We manufacture bedspreads, thermal blankets, and towels.
Incidentally, I'd like to tell you this busy man, in addition to scheduling the major league teams, Harry Simmons is the executive secretary of the International League. And as a baseball historian, has written a book called So You Think You Know Baseball. Be watching for that.
And he makes stamps for asking.
I don't think he does that, too. Well, gentlemen, you did well. You done it all the way down the line. That means there's $1,000 coming your way to divide. And on your way out, of course, a gift package from the makers of Primatine of all the fine products they manufacture. And we thank you for joining us. Good night, and God bless you. Well, that's all we have time for tonight. Good night to you, panel.
Good night, Dad.
Thank you for everything. Good night to all of you. Good night from Primatine. And, of course, be sure to join us again next week at the same time, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow afternoon on the daytime show. Meantime, don't you forget to tell the truth. Bye.
To Tell the Truth is a Mark Brooks and Bill Todman production. To Tell the Truth has been brought to you by Woolite. Safely soaks sweaters clean in just 3 minutes without stretching or shrinking. This is Johnny Olson speaking. For To Tell the Truth, the program was recorded.